So I've basically found a way to reduce your rendering cost by 98.5% or 66 times cheaper. And that's interesting because when you render like just one shot or one short animation that lasts less than 8 hours, you can always render it for free on your home computer at night. But very soon, when you do some projects, you will either want to push the quality, the sample count, or the just reduce the flicker in this kind of homemade renders, or you will have just more frames to render than you can fit in one single night on your home computer or computers. And that's when taking more than 8 hours, it's not possible with just your home computer. So you will want to use a farm, but then when you use a farm, you realize that for a render that costs you $0 at home, it will be invoiced to you $300 for this given amount of frames or rendering or whatever. This is the average expectation for one night of rendering on your machine. A farm will ask you for $300 on average, and for the first kind of stuff you will want to use a farm for, when you need like to render something that just takes like 2 nights. So it's just a little bit over this one night limit. You already start to pay something like $600. That start to be close to the price of a GPU or a computer if you add that up a few times. And if you render an entire film or project, you have something that's usually above 100 hours of rendering time. Very easily, it could be 1,000 if it's a more serious project. But this already, like say 20 nights of rendering on your home machine, is something that will be invoiced $6,000 by a render farm. So that just starts to be absurd, and you can buy one or two powerful computers just for this single render. And on the projects, you usually have to render everything 3, 4, maybe 10 times. So I don't know how people do to use this render farm service. I tried to find an alternative, and after a few years, I found one. So I initially used this kind of website where you can rent virtual machines, but it was pretty annoying to use. And then I found a method with Vast, and it's easy enough to use so that you can be set up in 10 minutes. You can be rendering already and seeing the frames on your machine, on your computer. So you can be already doing compositing on your final frames 10 minutes after starting to render. So it's nearly like rendering at home, or nearly like rendering on a very good farm that synchronizes the frames in real time. But the price is insanely lower. It's 66 times cheaper. It's just 1.5% of the price of basically any rendering farm service you can find. The main reason is that it's using 4090s instead of professional NVIDIA GPUs, because on render farms, the vast majority use professional GPUs that are more expensive than gamers GPUs, like a 4090, and they just do, I guess, a big margin, or they have huge costs. But with Vast, you basically just rent a computer for how much you want, 1 minute, 10 days, and the cost of this computer is similar to the cost of your home computer. Like that's around $1,000 per year. Like you buy a computer $4,000 or $5,000, a good computer now, and it lasts for 4 or 5 years. And on Vast, it's close to this. Like you can rent a computer for an entire year, and it will cost you maybe $2,000. And if you were to use the same processing power on a farm, it will be 66 times more expensive. So $100,000 it will be costing you. So anyway, this is the kind of result I had on this kind of rendering. That's like 2 entire nights at home. The invoice for I guess all farms are for these renders was $600, and I can render this for around $10 on Vast. And so for this entire short film project, the cost will be around $100 or $200 instead of $10,000 to $15,000. So anyway, let's jump into it. So the website is vast.ai. It has nothing to do with AI, apart that some people use it to train AIs. But we'll basically just open a machine, a computer. It's somewhere in the world. Someone built a computer, and it lets you click a button, install whatever you want on the computer, Blender, for example, and press Ctrl F12, just render your images that are synchronized in real time on your own machine, thanks to SynchThing. That's basically a kind of alternative to Dropbox for this use case. It just lets you select a folder on your computer and say synchronize that folder to another computer. And so whatever file is added on this folder on either side gets synchronized on the other computer. So you basically have your rendered frames appearing in real time on your machine, and you can do compositing on them or check them mostly. Because that's a problem with render farm. You have a high chance of like sending your file and not realizing there is 2 or 3 parameters that are wrong in your Blender file, and all your render frames are basically good to be put in the trash and restart. On Vast, you see in real time the frame being rendered on your screen, and once it's rendered, it pops on your hard drive on your home machine, so you can know exactly what you're getting in real time. So yeah, prerequisite, just install SynchThing. It's not exactly an app on Windows. It will just be accessed in your browser by typing localhost. I will link a step-by-step written documentation for this whole process. So once you do it 1 or 2 times, you can do it by heart in 10 minutes. So it's very simple and logical. There is no code or anything technical. It's just some copy-paste, basically, of your folder path. So once you've installed SynchThing, you can go on Vast. You create an account. I will put an affiliate link, I guess, in the description if you can use it. So here I'm connected. I have $6, and honestly, you can already render a lot with $6. So the first thing you want to do is go to templates and pick the Linux desktop. It's basically a template or a model or an image of a system. It has basically all the drivers or whatnot. It's Linux, but you don't have to know anything about Linux to use it. So you can click on select on this Linux desktop, and then you can go to search. Search meaning you'll search for a computer. So you can start with the number of GPUs. So from any 0 to here I will take 4 4090s, so an absolute beast already, but you can double that if you want. Then you can pick the region. So I'll grab North America because I'm in Brazil at the moment. And then they are sorted by price. You can check all the details of this computer, so the CPU, the RAM, the disk. You can set how much disk you want here, but usually you can just leave it by default. And yeah, just grab one with a good CPU, like AMD EPIC 64 cores. It's good. So I just click it on rent, $1.35 an hour. So it's not extremely cheap, but for the power you have, it is extremely cheap. So now you can click on instance. So that's where all your computers will be. So right now I just have this one to focus on the demo, but you can usually grab 2 or 3 at the same time. Once you're used to the process, it's quite fast to set them up. So in my other tab, I have SynchThing open. So that's my home computer SynchThing, but with Vast, I will open also this tab for the distant computer. And here you can add a folder. So you just copy paste the path of your folder in your computer, like My Document or Dropbox or whatever. You just copy paste the path. You give the ID, the name of this folder. You keep it the exact same as the actual name of the folder. So you just copy paste this. It will make sure that the folder in the distant computer has the same name as your own folder, because in your Dropbox file, you want to have your output image be the name of that folder. So it will just render already in that folder without you having to do anything. Like so if I come back on Vast, the computer has the open button, so it means it's ready, it's been installed, set up. So if I click on that, I can click on basically these two last things, the KDE Plasma Desktop, so Cloudflare Quick Tunnel. It's just two things basically. This is the screen share, and the fourth line, the last line here, it's the SynchThing tab. So I can middle click on both, the quick tunnel here, the third one, and the fourth one. So I open them in a new tab. I can close this tab. And so here, this is the computer. I can already open Firefox and download the Blender version I want. So I just download Blender. So that will take a few seconds. So in the meantime, I can go to the second tab, the SynchThing tab, and I will just connect my two SynchThing tabs. So in this one, I can click on Action, display my ID, I can just copy. And here in my SynchThing tab, I can add remote device. So I just paste the code. I give it a name like a vast one. And if I go back to this tab, it will detect that another computer wants to connect with it. It might take a bit of time, but sometimes it's instant. In the meantime, I can already share the folder when I want to render the images, and where I could also put my Blender file or anything I need to render. Here I will synchronize this folder. I go in the edit, in sharing. In the sharing tab, I can just select the computer, the distant computer I want to share this folder with. So I just save. And I have another folder with some image sequence and some add-ons and some stuff I want to synchronize with all distant computers. So I've separated it, and I can share it as well with this computer. So now I go back to this tab, and it detected that two folders are incoming. So I add them, I accept, and I leave this by default. It means it will put this in the home directory in Linux. So I can put the Blender file there also in the home directory. So any texture or library or output folder will be just next to it. And coming back on the screen share, I can unzip Blender, just right click extract here. And as my blend file is a bit heavy, it's like more than a gigabyte, SynchThing will be a bit slow. So I'll download it directly on this computer by basically simply adding a text file in the folder, like the render folder, the command folder, and pasting a Dropbox address, a Dropbox link, but it could be WeTransfer or MyAirBridge, whatever, just a link. It's just to do a copy paste. While copy pasting, the clipboard doesn't work directly on this screen share, but here if I go in home and render to the folder I shared, the link I just pasted in the document is here, so I can just save the text file, and it gets synchronized instantly on the distant computer that's in the United States. So it's all very fast, but for render that renders frames that are like 100 megabytes per frame. There is a bottleneck. So there's other ways than SynchThing to transfer files if you really want to render in Blender with all the layers in EXR and create files that are on average between 60 and 100 megabytes. There is maybe some other ways than SynchThing, because then your render will be maybe 500 gigabyte, 1 terabyte. So that's a lot of data if you want to do this kind of super heavy render. So I just copy pasted the link. I can download my Blender file, and here, as it's a direct download with the internet of that computer that's in the US, it's super fast. So 1 gigabyte takes like 4 or 5 seconds. So I can grab that file and just put it in home, meaning any external library that this file requires, like if I have external textures or linked Blender file, like the character is linked, or image sequence that cannot be packed inside a blend file, I can just sync them with SynchThing, and they will be instantly seen by the Blender file. So now I can just open the Blender folder and double click on Blender Launcher and just open. So Blender just launches. If you have a authorization issue, it's the first time I have this, but you can here open the configure configure Dolphin and go in confirmation and just have the run script here when opening an executable file. That might be very rare, but I don't know, that will help. So the first thing I want to do in Blender is telling him to use the 4090s in system, in the preferences, optics. I'll see here the 4090s. And then the second thing I want to do is install some add-ons. Here I want to install Camera Shakify. That's inside my second sync folder. So I just select it, and I want to install Turbo Tools or Turbo Render, an add-on you can find on Gunroad or Blender Market. That's really great at optimizing cycles render. So it basically automates all your settings and can do temporal denoising or stabilization. And that's what I'm using to reduce the flicker on all the specular mostly and many artifacts I still have. So I can save preferences in case of a crash. So they're already saved. And I can just open my file. And here the great thing compared to a render farm is that I can interact with my file. I can fix some things. I can adjust things at the last second, basically. And yeah, I can just click on render. And the files, they will already be rendered inside my synced folder because it's the same name I've used and it's in a relative path. So it will just access the folder that's next to the render file. And yeah, first frame, I can see the text shouldn't be rendered, so I can cancel already. And I haven't lost like $600 for nothing. I can just hide the text collection that's rendered on another theme in this file and just relaunch the render again. So that's extremely reactive to spot any issue compared to a render farm where you will have no idea before it's too late. And on some farms, you will see this kind of issue only at the very end after waiting hours and paying all this money and getting all the frames. You can see there is one small issue that made the whole render worthless. And yeah, here on Vast, it's just like your home computer. You can do whatever you want, except your home computer doesn't have 8 4090s, I guess. And mostly here you can have as many as you want, nearly. So now that it's rendering, I could set up a few more instances like this, a few more computers, and just render all my files. And if I go in the SynchThing tab, I can check the frames being rendered. Here I have the stats about the writing speed and all that. And in my SynchThing tab, I can see like the computer sending frames, the folder receiving the frames. I can see the speed. And then obviously on my home computer, here it's a Dropbox, so it supports Dropbox, but basically the frames they are written by SynchThing, and I can see them pop here every 20 seconds. I guess the 4090s render in 30 seconds, which will be maybe a couple minutes on my home computer with a 3090. So I can reduce the render window to see exactly the image, and I have also the timeline that will just show how much progress I've made. And here for 1,000 frames, it will take 8 hours. So it's a little bit of time, but basically in one single day, I could set up like 10 different instances and render something that will have taken me 1 or 2 months on my home computer in a single day and for basically very little money. So yeah, I think that's the kind of ultimate rendering solution. It's very empowering because you're not limited anymore kind of by any rendering. You can crank up the quality, the samples, and just render a lot of frames. So here, just to finish, at the same time, I can open my compositing blend file or the other software I use for compositing, and I can already scroll through the frame because in a couple minutes I already have frames I can check the compositing on. So it really feels like just adding a ton of 4090s next to you. It's really seamless once you're used to the method. But yeah, it took me weeks to figure out, and someone from Vast on the Discord helped me by implementing this SynchThing support. So yeah, it should save us around $15,000, I think, in rendering on this project from Shadi Safadi at One Pixel Brush, his first short film. So it's great for any indie artist who wants to step up in terms of animation. As yeah, it's really accessible. You don't have to do any code or anything. And here, yeah, shout out to Turbo Tools as well, because it's really practical on this project. I can still render the frames instantly, but as a second step, once the render is complete, I can click a button and have a temporal denoiser being applied to all these frames. So nearly 80% of the flickering you can see with this kind of blender render that's not 5 hours per frame, which is the standard in animation. You will get a much smoother result. Like the flickering is nearly gone with the temporal denoiser of Turbo Tool. And here on this project there is a lot of specular and mud, so the flickering from the denoiser in Blender is really visible by default, and on many short films on the internet you can see this flickering. And yeah, with Vast and Turbo Tools, I can basically get renders that looks like studio renders that are usually 4 or 5 hours per frame easily on a animated series. And here for a cost that's nearly nothing, I can get that quality, that finesse. So yeah, if Blender crashes, you can just look at the last frame that was rendered, reopen the file, re-render from there, and it's quite easy. And once the render is done, you can either send another file or just close, stop, or destroy your instance. And then you can delete the distant computer here from SynchThing. And that's just it. It's really a couple clicks to basically own some super powerful computers for any duration you want. So yeah, I think that covers all of it. I'll put a link to Vast in the description, I guess, and a step-by-step documentation that's much faster to quickly check compared to a video. So yeah, thanks.